The quantum communication array hummed with a low, almost imperceptible vibration that Captain Marcus Chen had learned to recognize over years of deep space diplomatic service. Most would have missed it. The subtle harmonic that indicated something was fundamentally wrong with the incoming transmission. Epsilon Horizon had been more than just another human colony. It was a testament to human resilience, established in one of the most challenging planetary environments ever colonized. Nestled in the Carina Arm, the colony thrived on a world of perpetual twilight, where binary suns created a landscape of endless, shifting shadows. Settlers had transformed harsh volcanic plains into vibrant agricultural zones, developing unique atmospheric processing technologies that made the impossible not just possible, but extraordinary. Marcus remembered the colony's founding ceremony. He'd been a junior communications officer then, watching Helena Reyes, the colony's founding governor, deliver a speech that still echoed in his memory. "We don't just survive," she had said, her voice cutting through the thin atmosphere. "We transform. This is not just a colony. This is humanity's promise to the universe." Now those words rang with a terrible irony. The encrypted transmission flickered across his personal display, layers of quantum-locked data peeling back like the petals of a poisonous flower. At first, it seemed like standard diplomatic traffic, encoded channels, security protocols, the usual bureaucratic labyrinth of galactic communication. But then, the details emerged. Confederation Diplomatic Encryption Level 9. Classified Operation Codename. Silent Horizon. Marcus's hands went cold. Level 9 encryption was reserved for the most sensitive communications, typically involving potential extinction-level decisions or classified military operations. He'd seen such encryptions before, but never with this particular signature. The first video log materialized. Governor Helena Reyes, older now but still with that same fierce determination. She was in an underground shelter, emergency lighting casting harsh shadows across her face. Multiple children were visible behind her, their faces a mixture of fear and desperate hope. To any receiving station, her message began, "Epsilon Horizon is under systematic attack. Confederation vessels have deployed prohibited quantum dissolution weapons. We are requesting immediate humanitarian intervention." Marcus watched, his breath catching in his throat, as the timestamp revealed the transmission was only 17 minutes old. The metadata told a chilling story. The Galactic Confederation's Council of Stellar Governance had voted unanimously, every single representative, to neutralize the Epsilon Horizon colony. The reasoning was clinical, almost bureaucratic in its cold precision. Potential strategic threat, technological development exceeding recommended species limitation protocols. In other words, humans were progressing too quickly. They needed to be stopped. Further decryption revealed the full horror. The quantum dissolution weapon wasn't just a weapon of destruction. It was a weapon of absolute erasure. Matter would not just be destroyed. It would be systematically broken down to the quantum level, ensuring nothing remained. No bodies, no evidence, just absence. The final layers of encryption contained something unexpected. Personal files. Thousands of them. Last messages from colonists. Family videos. Personal logs. Memories that were never meant to be a final testament. A young girl's birthday message, recorded just hours before the attack. A research team's breakthrough in atmospheric terraforming. A wedding ceremony conducted in the colony's central biodome. Ordinary moments of extraordinary lives, now preserved as a final devastating record. Marcus understood then that this was more than just a military transmission. This was a crime, a deliberate, calculated genocide, disguised as a strategic intervention. His fingers moved across the communication console with practiced precision. Multiple encrypted channels opened simultaneously, secure human diplomatic networks, emergency communication relays, direct military communication bands. The data would be transmitted, verified, and analyzed within minutes. The Galactic Confederation believed they were eliminating a potential threat. They had no idea what threat they were truly creating. Outside the courier ship's viewport, the endless starscape seemed to hold its breath, waiting. The United Earth Defense Force, UEDF, Preparation Center looked nothing like a traditional military installation. Situated beneath the Atacama Desert, the facility was a marvel of geological and technological integration, a living, breathing organism of human potential. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic display that pulsed with real-time data from thousands of research stations, colony worlds, and strategic outposts. Her dark eyes reflected the quantum-entangled communication networks that spider-webbed across multiple screens, each line representing a potential threat of humanity's survival. To the untrained observer, the room might have seemed chaotic, but there was a precision here that defied conventional military logic. Survivors from Epsilon Horizon moved with a purpose that transcended grief. They had become the core of something unprecedented. Dr. Kamil Noack, head of the Prometheus Protocol Development Team, approached the Admiral. His hands were never still, constantly interfacing with holographic displays that seemed to anticipate his thoughts before he could articulate them. The data from Marcus Chen's transmission is more than just evidence, Campbell explained, his voice a mix of scientific detachment and barely contained rage. It's a quantum-encrypted blueprint of the Confederation's entire strategic approach to emerging civilizations. Rodriguez nodded. The transmission was a weapon in itself, a key that would unlock humanity's true potential. In orbit above Earth, recruitment centers were experiencing something extraordinary. What had begun as a standard emergency mobilization had transformed into a global movement. Scientists, engineers, medical professionals, pilots. Every sector of human society was reorienting itself toward a single purpose. The survivors of Epsilon Horizon formed the nucleus of a new special operations unit. They were no longer just victims. They were the tip of humanity's spear. Among them was Dr. Elena Reyes, daughter of the colony's former governor, her brilliant mind now focused on technological vengeance. Project Prometheus is more than an eye, Elena explained to a group of newly recruited specialists. It's a distributed consciousness that learns, adapts, and anticipates faster than any known intelligence in the galaxy. The true marvel of Prometheus was its fundamental design. Unlike traditional AI systems that relied on linear processing, this network existed in a quantum state of constant potential. It could simultaneously explore millions of strategic scenarios, learning and adapting in milliseconds. Deep within the preparation center, entire floors were dedicated to technological innovation that would have been considered impossible just years before. Quantum adaptive armor that could restructure its molecular composition faster than enemy targeting systems could track. Faster than light communication networks that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. A breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Aisha Nyong'o, a materials scientist who had spent decades studying quantum entanglement, unveiled a weapons system that defied conventional understanding. The Ghost Protocol allowed matter to phase in and out of conventional spacetime, rendering traditional defensive strategies obsolete. During a live demonstration, a full-scale battleship simulation simply disappeared, then reappeared kilometers away, its systems completely untouched. The observation team, a mix of military personnel and civilian scientists, watched in stunned silence. But the most powerful weapon was something less tangible. The collective human response was unlike anything the Galactic Confederation could have anticipated. This was not just a military mobilization. It was a civilization awakening to its true potential. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed, not just by soldiers, but by specialists of every conceivable discipline. Linguists who could break down alien communication protocols. Quantum physicists who could redesign weapon systems on the fly. Medical researchers who could develop adaptive countermeasures to unknown biological threats. A message began to circulate, first in secure channels, then more widely. It was simple, but carried the weight of a species finding its true voice. We are not who you think we are. Admiral Rodriguez reviewed the final preparations. The Confederation had made a fundamental miscalculation. They saw humanity as a young, controllable species. What they were about to discover was a civilization that had been preparing, waiting, learning. And now, they would respond. Outside, the first of the new quantum adaptive warships began to launch. They moved with a grace that was both beautiful and terrifying. Machines that were more than mere technology. They were the physical manifestation of human potential. The demonstration chamber was a cathedral of human innovation, its walls lined with quantum reactive surfaces that shifted and shimmered like living membranes. Dr. Aisha Nyong'o stood at the center, her dark skin gleaming under the holographic displays that surrounded her like a technological halo. Gentlemen, she addressed the delegation of alien observers. What you are about to witness will fundamentally change your understanding of technological potential. The observation team represented some of the most advanced species in the Galactic Confederation. The crystalline Varkesh, with their multiple layered sensory organs. The silicon-based Quaraks, whose computational capabilities were legendary across known space. Representatives from dozens of civilizations, brought here under diplomatic pretenses, now witnessed humanity's true hand. Dr. Nyong'o's first demonstration involved the nano-adaptive armor, a technology that defied every known principle of materials science. The sample piece looked like nothing more than a silvery liquid metal at first glance, but as a series of progressively more powerful weapons were trained upon it, the material began to show its true nature. A high-energy plasma burst struck the sample. Instead of being vaporized, the material absorbed the energy, then restructured its molecular bonds in real time. The plasma simply dissipated. The alien observers leaned forward, their various sensory appendages vibrating with a mixture of fear and scientific curiosity. Quantum dynamic molecular reconfiguration, Dr. Nyong'o explained, her voice calm and clinical. The armor doesn't just protect. It learns. It adapts. Each attack becomes data that instantaneously modifies its defensive capabilities. The Varkesh representative, a being of pure energy contained within a delicate crystalline exoskeleton, made a sound that might have been a gasp. Their species had spent millennia developing adaptive technologies, and here was a solution that made their most advanced systems look like primitive toys. But this was just the beginning. The next demonstration involved the Quantum Entanglement Communication System. A holographic display showed two seemingly identical communication devices. One was placed in the demonstration chamber, the other in a shielded room several kilometers away. Dr. Elena Reyes, wearing a uniform that bore the scars of the Epsilon Horizon massacre, stepped forward. She typed a message on the first device. Instantaneously, without any visible transmission, the message appeared on the second device. Traditional communication relies on signal transmission, she explained. Ours doesn't transmit. It exists simultaneously in multiple quantum states. Unhackable. Instantaneous. Undetectable. The demonstration continued. The Ghost Protocol weapons system showed how matter could be phased in and out of conventional spacetime. A full-scale battleship simulation simply winked out of existence, only to reappear kilometers away, its systems completely untouched. But the most terrifying demonstration was yet to come. Dr. Kamal Noack unveiled the true power of the Prometheus Protocol, the distributed AI network that was more than just a computational system. It was a living, learning intelligence that existed in a state of constant potential. A holographic battlefield materialized. Complex military scenarios were projected. Everything from small-scale tactical engagements to massive interstellar conflicts. The Prometheus system didn't just analyze these scenarios. It lived them. Millions of potential strategies were explored simultaneously, with the system learning and adapting in microseconds. The alien observers watched in growing horror as the AI predicted and countered every possible strategic move with a precision that bordered on prescience. This is not just a weapon, Dr. Noack said quietly. This is the manifestation of human potential. Every scenario, every possibility, explored and understood simultaneously. The demonstration concluded with a chilling simplicity. The alien delegation was silent, the weight of what they had witnessed hanging in the air like a thundercloud. They had come expecting to see a primitive species. They were leaving with the understanding that humanity was something entirely different. Outside the demonstration chamber, the first quantum adaptive warships began to launch. Their engines hummed with a sound that was both a promise and a warning. Humanity was no longer waiting. Humanity was coming. The bridge of the UED of Epsilon's vengeance was a symphony of controlled fury. Admiral Elena Rodriguez stood at the center, her tactical display a three-dimensional representation of destruction about to be unleashed. The ship, first of the Quantum Adaptive Battle Group, moved with a grace that defied traditional understanding of space combat. Vortok had been chosen with surgical precision, not the most powerful Confederation world, but the one most directly responsible for the Epsilon Horizon massacre. Intelligence reports painted a clear picture, a militaristic society built on the systematic suppression of emerging civilizations, with a history of planetary-scale genocides that stretched back centuries. Prometheus. Rodriguez spoke softly. Begin engagement sequence. The AI's response was instantaneous. Not a voice, but a holographic representation that shifted and pulsed like living data. Millions of potential engagement scenarios collapsed into a single, perfect strategy. The first wave was invisible. Quantum entanglement communication systems began to infiltrate every single defensive network on Vortok, not by breaking through, by existing simultaneously within and outside their security protocols. It was less an invasion and more a fundamental reimagining of information space. Vortok's primary defense grid began to dissolve, not through conventional electronic warfare, but through a method that seemed to defy physical laws. Defensive systems simply forgot how to function. Targeting computers became confused. Communication networks twisted in on themselves. Major Elena Reyes, daughter of the Epsilon Horizon governor, monitored the psychological warfare component. Her team had spent months developing a communication protocol designed to shatter the Vortok military's cohesion. It wasn't just about destroying infrastructure. It was about destroying belief. Encrypted transmissions began to flood Vortok's communication bands. Personal records, classified documents, evidence of the Confederation's long-standing policy of suppressing emerging civilizations. The truth became a weapon more devastating than any physical assault. Vortok military commanders watched in growing horror as their most secure systems became transparent. Decades of hidden atrocities, systematic oppression, classified genocide reports. Everything was laid bare. The physical assault, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. Quantum adaptive battleships phased in and out of conventional space. Each vessel moved with a precision that made traditional space combat look like children's war games. Defensive installations were neutralized before they could even recognize the threat. A Vortok fleet commander's final transmission captured the moment of absolute shock. They're not just destroying us. They're teaching us something. The strike lasted exactly 17 minutes and 42 seconds, precisely the time it took to destroy the Epsilon Horizon colony. But this was not simple revenge. Every target was chosen with calculated purpose. Communication hubs, military leadership centers, strategic infrastructure. Each destruction was a carefully constructed message. Dr. Kummal Nowak watched from the Strategic Command Center, his hands moving across holographic displays. The Prometheus Protocol was writing a new language of warfare, one where destruction became communication, where every strategic decision carried multiple layers of meaning. The most sophisticated weapon was not the quantum adaptive ships. It was the narrative being constructed with each targeted strike. Vortok's primary communication center was the last to fall. As it dissolved, a final transmission was broadcast across all Confederation channels. Not a threat, not a declaration of war. A simple message: we are not who you think we are. Satellite imaging showed something unprecedented. Where military installations once stood, complex data matrices formed. living information structures that seemed to pulse with an almost organic intelligence. It was as if humanity was rewriting the very language of conflict. The Galactic Confederation would soon learn that this was more than a military engagement. This was a fundamental challenge to their entire understanding of civilization. Outside, the quantum-adaptive battleships continued their silent, deadly dance, machines that were more than machines, a species that was more than its technology. Humanity had arrived. The Galactic Confederation's Central Council chamber erupted in chaos. What had once been a model of calculated diplomatic precision now resembled a landscape of pure terror. Representative Jorak of the silicon-based Orcs delegation stood, their crystalline form vibrating with an emotion that transcended biological limitations. The human strike against Vortok is not an isolated incident, they declared, their voice a complex harmonic that carried through the chamber's quantum-dampened acoustics. It is a systematic deconstruction of our entire governance model. Holographic displays flickered with real-time data streams, each one a testament to humanity's unprecedented assault. The Vortok strike was more than a military engagement. It was a surgical dismantling of an entire civilization's infrastructure, accompanied by a data dump that exposed centuries of suppressed truths. The Confederation's oldest member species, the energy-based luminary, had always considered themselves the ultimate arbiters of galactic development. Now, they watched in growing horror as their carefully constructed hierarchy began to crumble. Admiral Elena Rodriguez's transmission played on repeat, a message that seemed to burn itself into the consciousness of every representative. We are not who you think we are. 5 distinct political factions emerged within the Confederation. The isolationists, led by the crystalline Varkesh, they argued for immediate and total quarantine of human-controlled space. They are a cancer, their lead representative argued, that must be contained before it spreads. The opportunists, smaller species long suppressed by the Confederation, saw a potential liberation. The Orcs were the first to openly express support for humanity, their transmission simple yet profound. We recognize our own liberation in your struggle. The pragmatists. Some council members recognized that humanity represented something entirely new, a species that could not be controlled through traditional means of diplomatic manipulation. The militarists. A coalition of warrior species wanted an immediate, overwhelming military response. They failed to realize that traditional military doctrine had become obsolete. The philosophers. A small but influential group began to study humanity not as a threat, but as a fundamental shift in galactic understanding of civilization. Dr. Kamil Nowak watched these developments through the Prometheus Protocol's distributed intelligence network. Each political reaction was analyzed, predicted, understood in millions of potential variations before the reactions even fully formed. The most devastating weapon was not the quantum adaptive ships or the advanced technologies. It was information. Classified documents began to surface across multiple communication networks. Evidence of systematic oppression. Detailed records of how the Confederation had deliberately stunted the growth of emerging civilizations. Humanity was not just fighting a war. They were conducting a comprehensive exposure of a galactic system built on control and manipulation. On the frontier worlds, something extraordinary began to happen. Species that had been marginalized for centuries started to see themselves differently. The human strike against Vortok became more than a military action. It became a symbol of potential. Rebellion sparked. Not violent uprisings, but systematic dismantlings of oppressive administrative structures. Each rebellion was different, tailored to the specific cultural and technological context of each world. The Prometheus Protocol analyzed these developments in real time. This was not chaos. This was a carefully orchestrated transformation. A transmission intercepted from a small frontier world captured the emerging sentiment. We watched how humans responded to destruction, not with blind rage, but with surgical precision. Not with simple revenge, but with a revelation of truth. Deep in the human fleet, Admiral Rodriguez understood something profound. This was never just about Epsilon Horizon. This was about fundamentally reimagining the nature of galactic civilization. The Confederation's oldest members began to realize a terrifying truth. Humanity was not just another species to be managed. Humanity was a fundamental force of change. And they were just getting started. Outside the council chambers, across thousands of star systems, a new understanding was beginning to take shape. The old rules no longer applied. A new game had begun. The archive chamber was a cathedral of forgotten histories. Buried deep beneath the UEDF's primary research facility, it contained centuries of suppressed information, a library of galactic truths that had never been meant to see light. Dr. Elena Reyes moved through holographic displays that flickered with the accumulated memories of countless subjugated civilizations. Each projection was a wound, a story of systematic oppression that stretched back millennia. A transmission from the Korax archaeological team revealed the first truly devastating piece of evidence. Recovered quantum-encrypted archives showed a systematic pattern of civilization suppression that predated the current Galactic Confederation by thousands of years. They didn't just control emerging species, Elena whispered to Admiral Rodriguez, who stood silently beside her. They cultivated them, like a gardener pruning plants to prevent them from growing too tall. The transmission detailed how the Confederation had systematically limited technological development through strategic embargoes, manipulated genetic research to prevent species from reaching full potential, destroyed scientific breakthroughs that threatened the existing power structure, created artificial conflicts to keep emerging civilizations divided. Admiral Rodriguez understood this was more than just a military campaign. This was a war of narrative, of truth. The Prometheus Protocol began its most complex operation yet. Not a military strike, but a comprehensive information dissemination strategy that would fundamentally challenge the Galactic Confederation's legitimacy. Dr. Kamil Nowak had spent months developing what they called the Resonance Protocol, a communication strategy that would do more than just transmit information. It would create a fundamental shift in collective consciousness. First, they targeted communication networks. Not to destroy, but to illuminate. Encrypted data streams began to flood every communication band, bypassing traditional security protocols through quantum entanglement techniques that made traditional encryption look like children's puzzles. The information was meticulously curated, not just raw data, but contextualized narratives that showed the human perspective. Personal stories from Epsilon Horizon, scientific breakthroughs that had been systematically suppressed, archaeological evidence of civilizations deliberately stunted. On thousands of worlds, populations began to see their history differently. A transmission from a small mining colony in the Carina Arm captured the emerging sentiment. We always believed our limitations were natural. Now we understand they were intentional. The Confederation's response was predictable and devastating to their own credibility. Instead of addressing the revelations, they attempted to suppress the information. Communication blackouts, diplomatic pressure, threats of economic isolation. Each attempt only amplified the message. Admiral Rodriguez understood the true weapon was not in their quantum-adaptive ships or their advanced technologies. It was narrative. It was truth. The Prometheus Protocol analyzed millions of potential responses, identifying the most psychologically impactful method of information dissemination. Each transmission was tailored to specific cultural contexts, designed to resonate with the deepest psychological triggers of each civilization. Dr. Elena Reyes found something profound in the archives, a pattern that went beyond simple oppression. The Confederation hadn't just controlled emerging civilizations, they had fundamentally misunderstood the nature of potential. They saw diversity as a threat, she explained to the strategic planning team. But diversity is the ultimate survival mechanism. Every suppressed civilization was a potential solution to challenges we haven't even imagined yet. The most powerful moment came unexpectedly, a transmission from the Luminary, the oldest and most powerful species in the Confederation, that was never meant to be intercepted. We have miscalculated. Humanity is not a species to be managed. They are a fundamental force of galactic evolution. Across thousands of star systems, populations began to see themselves differently. Not as isolated colonies or managed populations, but as potential. The Confederation had created humanity's greatest weapon, hope. And hope, they would soon learn, was the most dangerous technology of all. Outside the archive chamber, quantum adaptive ships continued their silent patrol, waiting, watching, ready to transform the universe once again. The Omega Protocol Chamber was a testament to forbidden science. Located in the heart of the Confederation's most secure research facility, it contained a weapon that had been theoretical for millennia, a device capable of destabilizing entire star systems with a single activation. Grand Archon Vexnar of the Luminary stood before the massive quantum containment device, their energy-based form flickering with a mixture of terror and desperate resolve. Around them, the most advanced minds of the Confederation worked with a frantic intensity that bordered on madness. Humanity has forced our hand. Vexnar communicated through a complex harmonic resonance. We will remind them of the true nature of galactic power. The Omega Protocol was more than a weapon. It was a fundamental violation of every known principle of stellar physics, a device that could unravel the quantum strings holding a star system together, causing a cascading collapse that would destroy not just planets, but the very fabric of space-time in that region. 17 separate fail-safes, quantum-encrypted security protocols, a weapon so dangerous that its very existence was a closely guarded secret among the Confederation's oldest species. They never saw the Prometheus Protocol coming. Deep within the human fleet, Admiral Elena Rodriguez watched the Confederation's preparations with a calculated calm. The Prometheus Eye had been analyzing the Omega Protocol for months, exploring millions of potential scenarios faster than the speed of thought. They believe this is their ultimate weapon, Dr. Kamil Nowak observed, his hands moving across holographic displays that seemed to breathe with living information. They don't understand that we've already won. The first sign of interference was subtle. Quantum encryption keys began to shift. Security protocols started to twist in on themselves. It wasn't an attack in any traditional sense. It was a fundamental reimagining of the weapon's operational parameters. Dr. Elena Reyes, leading the technological countermeasure team, had a personal stake that went beyond strategy. Every line of code was a tribute to the lost colonists of Epsilon Horizon. As the Confederation prepared to activate the Omega Protocol, something extraordinary happened. The weapon began to change. Quantum containment fields started to reconfigure. Security protocols became a labyrinth of misdirection. What had been a weapon of ultimate destruction became something else entirely. Vexnar watched in growing horror as the Omega Protocol's activation sequence began to broadcast. Not destruction, but information, personal records, classified documents, the entire history of the Confederation's systematic oppression, laid bare for every civilization to see. The weapon's activation became a transmission, a live broadcast across every communication channel in known space. We were never the monsters you believed us to be. The transmission read, you were. Millions of star systems watched as the Confederation's most closely guarded secrets were revealed, not through human intervention, but through the Confederation's own forbidden weapon. The Prometheus Protocol had done more than counter the threat. It had transformed it. Admiral Rodriguez understood the true victory was not in destruction, but in revelation. A transmission from a frontier world captured the moment. They tried to use their ultimate weapon. Instead, they became the weapon of their own destruction. The Omega Protocol's energy began to disperse, not in a catastrophic explosion, but in a cascading wave of information. Quantum-encrypted data streams that told the true story of galactic manipulation. Vexnar's energy form began to dissipate, not from physical destruction, but from the fundamental collapse of the narrative they had maintained for millennia. Impossible. They communicated in a fading resonance. Dr. Kamil Nowak allowed himself the smallest of smiles. No, he responded to the dying Archon. Just human. Outside the facility, star systems began to understand something profound. The true weapon was not technology. It was the capacity to transform even the most destructive potential into an opportunity for understanding. Humanity had rewritten the rules of conflict, and they were just beginning.